Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sisu Sisters podcast.
I'm Annukka, a LinkedIn coach.
And I'm Dorita, a business English coach.
Our podcast is all about succeeding, with themes like life stories and lightbulb moments. Welcome to a new episode of Sisu Sisters podcast. I'm Annukka.
And I'm Dorita.
And today our guest is Mary Bredin.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I love the international world us women are creating between Finland and England and Canada. It's great.
It's a pleasure to have you here today as our guest. And would you please tell a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I will. I'll try and keep it short. I'm a Canadian who had started in animation a long time ago in the entertainment industry, but mostly focused in animation and children's content. And then I moved to Paris and I worked there for a bit in the industry. And then I moved to London. I worked at Disney. And I had my son in London. And I've always been sort of interested in climate and environmental activism. And I came back to Canada and I was also working in children's content. And my son was playing baseball. And I was starting to get active in the environmental movement and social justice. And here I am today, leaning into all the challenges in the world, all by myself. No, just kidding. Me and so many others.
So I got to ask you, because you actually started out your career with something totally different. And obviously we are a career podcast. So how did it happen? What was your journey from lawyer to animation?
Well, it's even more extraordinary because I actually did my undergraduate degree in geography, urban and environmental geography. So quite, moves. But to be honest, I was always interested in theater and the creative arts. And I got into theater school in Canada, and my parents said, you're never going to make a living at that, which was, probably true back in the day. But on the other hand, I think I was just coming up as women were starting to get jobs in the industry. So if I'd held my guns, I probably would have wound up maybe more directly. Anyway, the geography was amazing. My time at McGill was amazing. So no regrets. And I think, that's what I've tried to do is just keep enjoying the journey and not to, look back. So the move from being a lawyer, well, law school is a special place. And unless you have that drive for detail and making money and the ultimate thing about lawyers is they're not directly implicated. They are not decision makers for a business. They are advisors. And there was something, or litigators. And I thought the litigation would be fun because it was drama and it was, intellectual, but actually fighting and dragging people down as a way to make your living and tearing people apart, like you really have to go for the jugular. I just thought, hey, it's fun to do this, occasionally, but I'm never going to, my mental health would be destroyed. Even then, I didn't have the vocabulary, but I could see that this was not a healthy pursuit without superior, a psychiatrist beside you. And then the contract part, when you weren't, I saw it was not as much fun when you're responsible for the decisions and you see the success. That's rewarding. So that was sort of why I moved out of law. In hindsight, I can see it. But believe it or not, I went to the Immigration and Refugee Board for a year to see what that kind of social justice was like. But working for the government at that age was just, I can't do this. The admin part was overwhelming for me. Again, I was like this free spirit trying to make a difference. And then I tried journalism for a year. I worked at Canada AM, but I realized on the salary I'd be making for the next 15 years, I'd have to live at home. And that I couldn't do. So the wonderful universe came together and I got a job at Nelvana, which was a really big and one of the sole big production companies in Canada at the time. So that was the trajectory. It was winding, but it was trial and error, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's the key to how I got to somewhere I really enjoyed.
And it was a very interesting angle when you said about the lawyer sort of like fighting. I hadn't actually thought about it. That
The
it's a,
litigation lawyers, that's what they do.
yeah,
They're,
that it's conflict,
yeah,
constant conflict.
yes, yeah. And, there are obviously, you're trying to get to a settlement point, but your ultimate starting point is, I want to beat the other side. And that's your job.
Hmm.
So it's tough.
Yeah,
I mean, after a while, you get used to it. There's a congeniality amongst the lawyers. At least you all know each other, so you're usually arguing with friends and colleagues. So it does become a very intellectual pursuit. But I couldn't do it.
mhm.
So, but it was good to try. It was good.
Exactly.
I saw the different paths, and I thought, can't do government, yet. Today, I'd kill for a government job that was 9 to 5 and paid well. But here we are.
So then the journey goes into, or did it actually go immediately into children's content?
It did. Well,
Right.
when I was hired at Nelvana, I was hired as a lawyer slash business affairs person. But as my boss at the time, the wonderful Michael Hirsch, who is well known here, said I was the only lawyer that made script notes. So he could see that I was just going to continue the journey through to the creative.
And
So.
why is it important that we make content for children?
Really, they enjoy relaxing as much as adults do, and they should have stories that are driven for them, are focused on their needs and their abilities. Because right now you have, 8-year-olds watching the Hunger Games and things like that. It's okay, I guess, but it's not. I don't know how healthy it is. And there's a research that's starting to show that, it probably isn't ideal that 6-year-olds are watching adult content. I mean, a family viewing can be the Great British Bake Off or whatever it's called, but having their own content for them to relax and know, and for parents to know it's a safe space. I think that's really important. And unfortunately, it's not as profitable. Now we're all working for shareholder value. So the public broadcasters having to pick up all the slack, and it just seems ridiculous that what is value? Our Canadian children, Finnish children, and I mean, Finland does a great job, and so does the BBC still, but it's a lot on their shoulders if there's nobody else producing content. And then kids will drift to YouTube, and
Mm,
who knows how focused that content is.
yeah, yeah, and that can be quite dangerous.
Well, as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
YouTube does have a kids sort of gated area now, but I still am not convinced that that content is all as wholesome as it could be,
Mm.
in my humble opinion, of course.
You have a very good question, Anuka, that would fit
Oh,
in here.
yes. If you had unlimited budget and creative freedom, what kind of climate story would you tell?
Ah, I think if I had unlimited freedom, I'd tell all different types of climate stories. We're in an intersectional time where climate is everywhere, or definitely having impacts. So I would do things from a children's show about how to rewild or put a vegetable patch on your balcony. Follow some children. So I would do a live action and show the kids doing that, right through to animated series that are just about animals having fun. And maybe my show is in that vein. It's a raccoon and a squirrel who wake up one day in their little sort of forgotten patch by the library to find it's been rewilded. And so now they get to meet the bees, and they've never met bees before. So who are these? And in my mind, this story would have these three triplet bees because my father was a triplet. And I like putting quirky things of everybody's life in shows, because it makes stories more unique and more interesting. Who else's dad was a triplet? Not. I don't think there's so many.
I don't know any. I had a colleague once who had triplets, but yeah, apart from that, I don't know anyone who is a triplet. Or
There's ways of incorporating those things. So they're gentle stories, or could do more stories like Jane, which is on Apple TV. It's a live action series. It's probably for the 8+ crowd, or 7+, and it's sort of very direct climate information. I mean, there's just such a potential. You want to go down a documentary route, find some poor kid in some. I shouldn't have to watch my words. If there's children who are rebuilding something in a place like North Carolina that was hit by the hurricane and the flooding, and make it inspirational. There's that. So talk to kids who've been directly affected by climate disasters, but do it in a thoughtful and reasonable way for a 6-year-old to watch,
yeah,
or,
yeah,
or
yeah.
make it for 10-year-olds. I I could go on. Do you want the entire podcast to be me spewing ideas? I don't know.
No, but it's interesting. I think it's
Anybody
to
who's
sort of
listening who wants to make that show, contact me. There you go.
there you go. Hello.
Yeah,
No, but because you obviously mentioned there the shareholders or stakeholders, um, so we realize, and you mentioned that there is less and less money for it
yeah.
for the children's contact, which is quite frightening as well. And yeah.
Because if you're running your entire world on extraction and maximum profit,
Mm,
uh, lots of things will fall by the wayside. Because even a corner restaurant, it can make okay money and pay salaries at a decent wage, but how much profit do you need? It's this trend towards greed that is, I think, putting us out of balance, and
yes.
forgetting that nature, we're all nature. And if we kill nature, that's not good.
Yeah. Then what is there then
Hmm.
if we kill
Hmm.
nature?
Hmm.
So when we had our pre-recording chat, which we always have with our guests, you also talked about the importance of networking.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
obviously we're really interested in that, especially as Anuka is a LinkedIn coach by her profession. But what
Yeah.
did you mean by the importance of networking, and how does that play out for you?
Well, it's interesting. I tell my students to look around, because most of the people that are there will be in the industry in 20 years. And I almost wish someone had told me that. Maybe it's because women don't play enough team sports. Maybe I didn't understand networking because, my father was a high school teacher. There's less of it there. And my mother was, stayed at home and made pottery. Um, so the idea that your classmates will be in the industry in 20 years, it's real. Get to know them, find the people you relate to. I mean, it's a class of 36. There's going to be people you relate to. So I've tried to instill that in my students because I missed it. And then on my own side, I'm trying. I'm a bit of an introvert, so it is less obvious for me to, schmooze around a room. And I usually go with an extrovert so that I can follow them and just say hi, um, but I'm forcing myself, and I continue to force myself. I think getting to know people is fascinating. I do love that kind of connection, but also you just never know where, Dorita, how we met. It's quite extraordinary. So I think that openness is actually something I'm really leaning into right now. And now that my son is grown, women are really stuck a bit, because while your kids are small, it's hard to be social. It's hard to just relax and kind of have those spontaneous chats, because you're like, oh crap, I got to go pick him up from daycare.
Mhm.
I got to do this. And the time I forgot to get him from daycare, I was having fun doing one in my building. There was a clothing reseller, and make they made clothing, and they had an open house. So one of my colleagues said, "Let's go," and I was there, having fun with her and getting to know her. And of course, I completely forgot to get my son from daycare. I mean, I was 1 minute late, but it evaporated
Oh,
anyway.
yeah. And
That's
mum guilt hits you then as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And I was on my own at that time, so
Yeah.
it was really
I think I
challenging
can
to network.
I
Yeah.
think I can top your story.
Okay, tell me.
One of our podcast guests, and I'm not going to mention who this is, once nearly forgot to pick up her child because she was waiting for some free wine that was given out at her workplace.
But you see what I mean? You're trying to lean into the networking. And okay, when you coach people on networking, I hope understand and recognize that parenting, especially for women, because it's still and it's becoming more so that world, that it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So you touched upon all the companies you worked for, worked abroad, and that, and
Yeah.
obviously we are very interested in that big name, Disney.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you all about Disney. And for
Cool.
network, the people at Disney that I met, so I was there for 8 years, was I consider like an MBA. I got an MBA in marketing brand support. And the people I met there have gone on to have fascinating careers. So again, not just the students looking around their classroom, but getting to know your colleagues and who's there, and watch their careers. It's been amazing and very rewarding, because the people at Disney were so smart and so interesting, and most of them were just very kind and wonderful people.
So was it kind of like a sort of almost blueprint for how things should be done?
Um, Interestingly enough, I'm not sure that would be correct. It's one way of doing things, because then I went on to Viasat, which is based in Sweden, as you know, or it's a Swedish company, and it's the TV headquarters is just near Heathrow in London, and they did it the opposite. So, and I just loved Viasat as well, because I love that cowboy energy. I love that freedom. Disney has a model of sort of like an ocean liner. It takes a long time to move it and maneuver and find the direction, but when they do, it's an enormous behemoth coming in. Whereas Viasat is like all guns blazing. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's enjoy it. And wow, it was refreshing to see both the models and how both worked.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I think, at the end of the day, whatever company you're in, or whatever company, it should suit you. Um, I was probably more of a Viasat type, because I like that independent entrepreneurial spirit. So sometimes at Disney, I did bump against things. But, it was funny, because at Disney, I was sort of hired because of my outside experience and bringing that knowledge in. But sometimes it was challenging to have that kind of independent spirit in a really, really big corporation. So, I
yeah.
mean, Disney's bigger than some governments.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah. The global population of Disney is, I haven't checked lately, but it was about 100,000.
yeah.
So a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. So it has to be regimented in that sense as well. You can't have 100,000 cowboys.
Really? Yeah, true, true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
But
my
but
next
but
yeah,
thinking about that, I think it is good, if we're thinking about careers, and I think it is really good to acknowledge your spirit and where you need to be happy. And, it was great to try Disney in 8 years before I got laid off. You know, Probably was a good thing in the end. It's back to that. A layoff can ultimately be okay.
absolutely. And I'm sure you, Anuka, you speak to a lot of people who've been laid off and
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
help them with their LinkedIn profiles and yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
As much as it's a shock to the system, but it can be the start of
The
something
shakeup,
beautiful.
yeah, the shakeup can. I mean, I would have stayed at Disney a long time, despite perhaps not being the happiest place for me personally. You know, and I know people who've been there many, many years and had great experiences. So yeah,
Mm,
it's about your, your journey, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And your journey, now we're getting to some very interesting facts. Emmy nominated, Oscar nominated, Women Leader in Business Award. Please do share how these came about. I'm sure our listeners would be really interested in hearing about these.
Well, on the Oscar nominated, it's not me personally. It's the project I worked on called The Breadwinner, and so grateful to be part of the team. I mean, what a astounding movie! If you can find The Breadwinner, it's an animated feature film. Angelina Jolie was one of the executive producers on it, and it was stunning. But there were to make an animated film and to make a kind of social justice story in animation takes so many people and so much hard work, that I'm very, very grateful to be a small part of that journey. On the Emmy nominations, I was deeply involved in that project, and a really important part as the one of the executive producers, and helped develop the show. It was a wonderful experience. Yeah, I really had put all my heart and soul into this show, which is called Just in Time. And it's really great for the 4 to 7 year olds, about a little boy who goes to different places in the world and discovers a girl there. Her name is Olive, and she's always local, so we never know if it's real or not. And it's kind of we I the idea or the inspiration for it about Olive came to me because when you see kids in the playground, they don't care who's there. A 6 year old will just walk up to whoever's there. Maybe they've seen them before, maybe they haven't. It doesn't They don't care if they saw them last week. They maybe don't remember, or don't worry about it. You know what I mean? So that Justin shows up in all these different places and Olive is there. It just felt like that kind of playground. Oh, you're here. That's great. I don't know who you are, and I don't. We're here in this moment, and that's good. So that's where I was sort of playing with that. But she was always local.
Mhm.
Um, so wherever we went, Olive could identify the problem and help fix it. So it was a nice kind of combo of learning and discovery. Yeah.
I need to find that on YouTube. Are there any episodes on YouTube? I need to watch this.
And then the award, I can tell you a little bit about. It's an organization called Women in Film and Television, which is fairly global. I'm not sure if they have one in Finland, but I definitely know they have a group in London. And they're promoting women in the industry because we're still not at parity. Although we have more representation on screen, behind the scenes, we're still struggling. Directors, as you hear, at the Oscars, are usually men. 5 men and 1 woman is where we're at now. But so Women in Film started, and the Toronto organization is quite, active, and they have a big event every Christmas, and they pick 3 sort of women from the industry who they want to celebrate and recognize. And so I got the award for bringing this studio called Guru Studio, from help. I got them from helping them become from a commercial studio to a fairly big entertainment company. And so that was the acknowledgement of the building that I'd done, which is exciting because that's what I like to do. So I was very proud to receive that. And my
Wow.
colleagues nominated me, and then a group accepted that I was worthy, and so it was fun.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I love it when people get recognized for what they're doing. That is
Yes.
really, really important.
It's true. I have a colleague who feels sad that she's never been acknowledged for all the mentorship work she's done. And it makes me sad because we need to celebrate more people and more appreciation for people who give back. I'm appalled at the number of businesses that don't give back. And I'm like, really, this is the time. You need to help other people. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm a big believer in giving we receive kind of thing. Yeah, maybe we need more of that, I think.
Over to you, Anuka.
Ah, it's me again. What would you say were your light bulb moments in your career?
Well, it was funny just before I got on the call. I was thinking about that, and I've had so many. When the light bulb move from Toronto to Paris was, I always thought I'd be in a big corporation and they would send me overseas. And I'm like, crap, I can do it myself. I can just move. And that was big. And I really can't recommend moving enough to people because you get such a bubble view and so stuck in your ways and so kind of crystallized early on. Whereas throwing myself into Paris and Europe was great, really, really great for me. So that was a big one. I guess not, and even going back, realizing I didn't want to practice law was a pretty big one. But we discussed that. Um, Recognizing that I wasn't going to be happy in France long term was a pretty big one. And I started looking for work outside of France. And at the time, believe it or not, there were a lot of people moving from France to London. I was part of a little mini exodus. What else? Oh, when I had my kid on my own, uh, it was that reaching 40 and thinking, oh, if I don't get to do something, I will be childless. So that was a big light bulb moment that I really, really wanted to have children. And then it wasn't a light bulb when I moved back to Canada. Both my parents were very ill and slash dying. And so that was more of a necessity. But actually, a friend of mine said, Mary, you have to come home and help with this. So it was kind of a forced light bulb. And then, yeah, I guess now I'm starting my own shows and developing climate activism stories. And that was probably 5 years ago when I had a big party and the guy helping me, my former assistant, a wonderful person, spent so much money and bought so much plastic. I thought, never again. So that was 2019 when I really, really moved into a more sustainable lifestyle and thinking about these things.
There's quite a
Sorry,
few light bulb moments there.
I could go on with light bulbs. I seem to have light bulbs all the time. It's like, why didn't I think of that sooner?
Yeah. And
But
I think that thing that you said there about moving, as obviously I'm an expat as well, or as some people would call an immigrant, whichever you like to
I
choose.
know, isn't that,
Um,
yeah,
I think it has does me done me good. I think it does you good
yeah,
to understand that there are different ways of doing things.
100%.
Because if you stay in one place, you just think this is the only correct way of doing things,
Yeah,
and then suddenly, you move to France and you think like, oh, hang on, they can do things this way, and it still works.
yeah.
You
I
move to
have,
London and you see the
yeah,
same thing. So
yeah, exactly. It's almost like the Disney Viasat model. I understand that, you can't have chaos, but at the end of the day, it was sort of organized and strategic, but just done much faster and more nimbly. Um, but yeah, I lived in Ireland when I was a kid with my family. My dad had a sabbatical. So that did set me up for sort of this understanding that, and as Canadians, perhaps also, we have a pretty good way of navigating different cultures and different ways of doing things. Yeah,
yeah,
that was a big part of my job at Disney in the end, was working with the channels all over the world. And I used to say, gosh, maybe I should be working at the UN because here I'm helping Disney buy TV shows and make money. It was good to have all those cross cultural connections and understanding. So it helped my
brilliant.
career. The moving helped my career
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And just to sort of round it up, I know half an hour has gone like woof, like this. Uh, what's happening in your life next? What sort of journeys are you venturing on?
Well, I have to work for a few more years, so I'm navigating the how to be older in an industry that really prides itself on youth and that uh, sort of what's next rather than settling into a good story. Um, so I'm doing a few things. I'm teaching. I'm working with a nonprofit in the regenerative agriculture space, plus for children, how to teach children and young people about nature. And um, they are the ones who co-produced or were involved with a project called Future Chicken, which if you haven't checked it out and you have 6-year-olds in your life, it's all about sort of environmental activism and ideas for children that gives them hope. And because taking action is one of the main ways we can maintain hope in this kind of doom and gloom. So finding community and taking action. Um, and so I have 3 projects that I'm developing myself, seeing if I can get another show made. So I'm excited about that potential. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I've got a lot of, irons in the fire. So we'll hopefully be very busy for the next 5 to 10 years. And then I'm done. I'm going to lie on a beach. So,
Moving abroad again somewhere,
yes,
Hawaii or, whether
I'm
it'll be
thinking
Bali,
Spain.
Indonesia
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
yeah, cocktail in your hand on the
Yeah.
beach,
Yeah.
thinking, I had a good life.
I don't think
Absolutely.
I don't think I'll ever be able to give up my activism. So,
No.
yeah, it'll probably be if I go to Indonesia, it'll be helping clean the rivers. There are some people who are very, very active helping and working in Indonesia.
You see, there was a reason why I mentioned Bali for some reason. Mary, thank you so much for coming on to the Sister Sisters podcast. We've been thrilled to have you as our guests, and just even, like I said, half an hour's just gone like that. But at least we've got a snapshot into your life and all the things you've done. And I'm sure our listeners are going to be very, very inspired and interested in hearing your story. So thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to get to know you both, and Dorita, I'll be in London in May if you're up for a beer. I don't even really like beer, but
No, I don't either. So it'll have to be something else then. But yes, I'm up for it. Yeah,
nice,
absolutely.
good. All
You.
right, Annika and Dorita, it was wonderful to meet you, and an
Thank you.
amazing effort, and you're doing here. It's terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. What an interesting woman and a remarkable story. What were your takeaways, Anuka, from this episode?
Actually, that you can do things in different ways and still succeed when you're comparing the way they are doing business in at Disney and then at Viasat. That was one thing.
Yeah, that
And
was a
you?
very interesting
Yep.
point. It obviously resonated with me, the fact when she said about that moving is good, moving to different
Hmm.
countries, and she suggested that try that if you can. So that obviously resonated with me.
Yes.
So that was all we had time for this time. Thank you once again to all our listeners for listening to Sister Sisters podcast or watching on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Before we go, Anuka, where can people find you if they want to look you up?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Annukka Toivonen, and on Instagram, Annukka Toivonen. And where can they find you, Dorita?
I'm also on LinkedIn, Dorita Dahl Foreman, and I'm on Instagram under English with Dorita. That's all. And I'm going to do my normal goodbye wave and say that's over and out from me here in Britain.
And it's goodbye from Jyväskylä, Finland.